Morning Cafe, the very last laps of the show as we delve deep into matters social life. And today we take a look at some of the reports that have been projected right now as we deal with COVID-19, and the number of divorce cases in different setups across the globe are on the rise. This courtesy of COVID-19. As one would say, a majority of families are not used to being together, cocooned in one room, and then officially COVID-19 rendered us at this particular point. Some have celebrated this, but also there are others who are, lamenting and are crying foul in regards to this. So joining me is psychologist Nancy Rahab to just tell us what could have pushed us to that level. I mean, is that how much we do not value family? Is that how much we dread family? Is that how much we really want to be away? Yet the core value of family, the core value of marriage is to keep us together?
Okay, I think it's a key indicator that we don't know each other as spouses, because once you isolated together, you tend to learn more about each other, and maybe you don't like some of the aspects that you discover about your spouse, and that is likely to even cause more chaos.
Yeah.
Yes.
So years, like say you've been together for 10 years, 20 years, and you say it's hard to always learn your spouse, like every other time is a learning experience. Honestly, we can have people who stayed together for as much as 20 years and they would still say that they don't know each other.
What I would say is you learn new behavior, you also unlearn behavior. So maybe someone has picked up behavior that you really don't like, and you're like, I didn't bargain for this. And those are some of the aspects that you're able to see. And also, how do we deal in crisis? How are we supposed to even relate in crisis? And how are our interpersonal skills? Because that is very vital.
Okay. Yes. All right. In such a scenario, then there is also that aspect of the children and all that. We've not started the conversation. We're just starting. So I am thinking, until this point where we say that, okay, well, we didn't know each other and everything, what would push you to that point of overlooking the interest of wanting to learn your partner at this time, and you choose a divorce rather than, just trying to learn this person, and you even overlook the aspect of children who are there dependent on you, dependent on the family umbrella?
When people are undergoing a crisis, most of the time you think about yourself first. And some of the interpersonal skills you might have learned don't really work, like patience, dependability, responsibility. You're just thinking of how awful this person is and not really looking at yourself first. What am I doing to make sure that this thing is working, or what am I not doing enough? Yes, so it's just that this person is the only one you can see, so you pick on this person and you're seeing all the bad things or aspects that this person has. And remember, he's also in the same crisis just like you. Some have lost jobs, you see, and maybe you married this person because of the job he has, the income that he has, and now it's no longer there. How do you cope with that? And most people are opting out. Yes.
All right, so I am looking at some of the news stories that are making headlines, and about divorce, especially at this time of COVID-19. Divorce rates increased in Saudi Arabia amid COVID-19. Divorce rate after coronavirus quarantine in China is warming up, and it's COVID-19 changing our relationships. And I want you to answer that. Is COVID-19 changing our relationship? The pandemic has slowed down, has slowed the divorce process. Here's what to expect. So again, because the court processes and everything are not there, so it is a little bit slow. So again, in as much as you really want out, you're forced to be together with this person. So what could be the dangers of that? So before we even delve deep into some of these stories, I mean, has COVID-19 come to change the relationships that we enjoy?
I think it has, because you spending more time with your spouse. And in most cases, some even work away, now they are home. Some are here for maybe just a weekend, and they work far from home. Or they leave so early and come back so late, you don't even see them. But now with quarantine, they are there 24/7. You're able to see how this person brushes their teeth, how they use the toothpaste, how they are all over your face. So can you stand this person? And remember, most people are not friends in marriages. They don't even know each other. You don't share hobbies, which is important because you have all this time, and you don't even co-parent well. It's me against him or him against me. And now that COVID-19 has brought us together, instead of that making us have quality time together, we're fighting more. Yes.
All right, now that it is here with us and the numbers are already projected, probably we did not envision this, we did not prepare for this, and it is here with us. Before we even talk of how we can avoid such occurrences, what can we do in this time when, of course, we witness these numbers of divorce cases on the rise as it stands?
Yeah, I think first of all is to look at our expectations. Why did I get married? What do I want from this man? And if it's not there, how do I cope with that? And we also need to come up with new coping mechanisms. Since we're in a crisis, we can't travel. You know, most of the time people take a vacation, they go and bond. Now that is not likely to happen anytime soon. So how do we even cope or live with each other amicably and communicate better? Starting with you, how are you feeling? Tackle your feeling and address to the other party. This is how I'm feeling about you doing A, B, C, D. Instead of attacking the person, attack the issue.
All right, speaking of which now, and this one that we are touched on, the pandemic has slowed down the divorce process. Before we even come into it, first of all, upon realization that there's so much that you do not know about this person, there's so much that you cannot stand, on this person, and you literally want out. As a psychologist, at this particular state, what is one supposed to do? I mean, as they deal with themselves, I mean, what is this crucial thing that they're supposed to do? One, maybe to try and salvage and save the situation. Or two, would you advise that you should just proceed? Because now when you realize that it's bad, it's toxic, it cannot be managed, is it okay and wise to proceed and divorce this person?
I think first of all is that reevaluate your expectations. Because if it's money, can you stand without money, and is that the end of life? Or if you have other options of economic, whatever, sustaining yourself economically, and even about your children, is it really about money? Do they need their father? Because having a father without a job and not having a father at all are two different things. And then divorce is really about you two people. It does not change your parental status. He's still the father of your children. You're still the mother of his children. So are you thinking about these children? Because divorce actually affects children more than the partners. Yes.
Okay. And at what point then would you acknowledge that it is important to proceed and divorce? Okay, well, we would say that it's been such a short span, such a lengthy span dealing with this, health issue, but also such a short span for someone to wake up and say, you know what, in 3 months, I think I cannot stand you, and off I go. At what point would you be convinced as a psychologist that it's okay, this is worth, for these partners to call it quits?
I think when it's abusive, and not just physically, even emotionally, because someone can really abuse you emotionally that you end up depressed, even lead you to suicide, and such things. That is very toxic. If you cannot communicate with this person at all, I think then there's no way forward. But if you can put yourself aside and try and communicate, or even ask for help, professional help, to be able to communicate, because I think communication and cooperation is what makes a marriage work. And in communication, you talk about your emotions, your feelings, and address that one-on-one, face-to-face, And if you're able to do that and not really get solutions, then I think there's no way forward. But I think in all cases, with good communication and cooperation, marriages can work.
All right, that's interesting. And this one, the pandemic has slowed down the divorce process. One would look at it as something that is directed to the people who officiated their marriages, maybe at the Attorney General's office, in churches and all that. And it truly is, it is, because then also we know the process of marriage itself has been altered hugely because of COVID-19. So in such an occurrence, how do you then realize that, okay, this is toxic, this I cannot deal with anymore, but then there are also legal processes that need to be incorporated. There are also processes, formal processes that need to be incorporated. How do you balance this until that time when it is official and evident and clear that you two are no longer an item?
I think the first thing is to ensure you're safe. You and your children are safe. Because you wouldn't say that because the courts have closed, so I have to stay with this person and be beaten for at least up to September, or give yourself a timeline. No. Are you safe? and what can you do to ensure that you are safe?
Yeah.
Because most of the time, even violence doesn't really mean that the person likes fighting, but maybe you're also provoking it, you know, and such things. But I think this depends on the country you're in, because in like Kenya, it starts with separation first. You don't just go to court and you're given that divorce, but you're separated and you're able for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's not just a few months. Like, we've been having COVID for the last, I think, 8 months or so.
3, 4. Okay, well, in the country officially would say like we just hit 100 days.
Yes, 100 days. Yes, the other day.
Mm.
So now that will take a longer time. So you need to separate yourself from this person if he is physically abusive, and then you're able now to even think straight through things. Can this work, or this is the end of the road? Divorce is not something you just wake up and say, I'm going to divorce this guy. No, it's a long process, and you really need to be very, very sure whether you want to embrace single parenthood, whether you want to co-parent with someone, or it's really like not something you wake up and just embrace. Yes.
Okay. Interestingly, how people have come up with ways of one surviving this tide, and they give you tips so smoothly, and how smooth ways of ending your marriage in the age of coronavirus, where divorce is harder than ever. Sincerely speaking, do we need this? Are they necessary? Some of these tips that we're actually talking about. I don't even want to delve deep into some of the tips that have been given, but as a psychologist, you probably would get to that point where you might need to give someone a tip, like you've just given us one. Ensure that you are safe. So what are some other key things that one would look at as as a smooth way of transitioning from this point to that point?
I think if you have children, are their priority, because it has to be amicable for the sake of your children, because they are watching, they are going through the same process of separation with you. It's a loss for them, losing one parent and not being able to get to see them every single day. So how are they taking that up? Because that also leads to other things later on, or even immediately, like even getting into drug use, especially teenagers, adolescents. They don't take divorce kindly. So have you thought through that? Have you sat, even when you've decided let's divorce, you should at least be communicating. What will happen to so and so? What will happen to our property? What will happen to our economic status? Since now we're not two, it will be one of us parenting. What will happen? Where will we stay? Because now the matrimonial home, it's no longer the home for everybody, and all those scenarios. Considering that now we are undergoing through the pandemic, are you likely to change residence easily? Are you likely to even get to a neighborhood that is safe for your children? Who will take care of your children when you're working, and all those scenarios? Because you don't want to expose these children to a hostile new residence, and or even you're not even sure of how safe it is, just because you want to get divorced. Yes.
All right, and speaking of which, again, as you are, pondering this, finances are key. Investments that you've put together are key. So in such a scenario, I mean, do you just overlook all this and say it's over and done? It's about my happiness. It's about my joy. Do you overlook the aspect that if I am the one who's going with the kids, then I might need this. I might need something as something as resourceful as a seat for them. Something as resourceful as a cooker for them. So at least I'm able to fend for them and ensure that they are able to enjoy a meal.
And I'll say this again. Divorce is something you think about when you're very sober. Put aside your anger, put aside your bitterness, and think through of how you will survive, especially when you have young ones to take care of. Because can you imagine if you just walked out with nothing? Where will you say? Will you be a homeless person with children who are used to maybe a very big house? You also need to prepare these kids psychologically. You don't just walk out, and one of the worst thing one can do is actually hide this impending divorce where as far as children are concerned, because once they discover they are very unforgiving, and it is very depressing for them. Yes.
Okay, how do you sit them down and speak to them and make put some sense into their head and make them understand that this is bound to happen and it's not because you don't love them, and you know, coming to that aspect of co-parenting and single parenting.
Yeah. First of all, you have to reassure them that it's not their fault, because most of these children think it's them who caused all these chaos. Because you know, sometimes kids can be naughty. They can remember maybe an incident that happened and think, oh, maybe daddy left because I did A, B, C, D. Reassure them it's not your fault. Mommy and daddy need to separate. It has to be child friendly, depending on the age of this child, you know. And then tell them that this is still your father. That is very important. Do not blame the other party, and always assure them that this person will always be there, and ensure it's amicable in front of the children.
It's different. It's different. Well, we've witnessed of late, you know, people embracing co-parenting a lot. But equally, there are some few who would prefer to disappear from the lives of this person, maybe because of the damage that they have faced, disappear completely, disappear from the lives of these kids. I mean, how do you take them through that process and let them know that, daddy was here today, daddy will never be here again?
Okay, I will not judge. So I'll say people have different reasons why they want to disappear. Like, for instance, if someone was abusive even to the children, one might want to really disappear completely and even hide your location if this person is even a stalker and all that. But I would say it's very unfair to the children, because they love both parents equally. You know, it's very ideal to have a mother and a father if they are alive. So I think sometimes it's good to put yourself aside and know that it is important. No matter how bad you think this person is, he's still the father of your children. So give them an opportunity to get to learn about him, to know him, and then they'll make their decision whether they want to see him often or not.
Transitional process. But sometimes one would step from this relationship to another one almost immediately. Some, of course, based on the kind of pain that they've gone through. Some of them as a rebound. Some of them having well thought about this and everything. So how do you get these kids to understand that, yes, somebody else is coming into our space, and you know, you can appreciate this person, you can look at them as though they are daddy, you can look at them as though they are mommy, and you know, try and embrace them?
I think personally you can move on, but the children, it has to be a process, because remember, they've lost. It's a loss, and they need to actually get used to that fast before you introduce someone else. But also for their safety, you don't even know this person well. You can hop into another relationship for all you want, you know, but the children cannot do that. They're still thinking of their father. They now blame you because of this or blame this other person who is very innocent because of what happened to their parents. So it's good to think that through, and it's okay to start another relationship. But are you really, you know, you're still wounded. What are you going to give in that relationship? I think it would be very selfish to do that and also involve the children. But if it makes you feel better about yourself, it's okay. But you have to consider these children and their ages first of all.
Now that you talked about ages, which is best? Some would argue that, okay, he's only 3 years old. What does he know? Do I even have to explain anything? No, he's probably at 10 years. Maybe this one needs to understand some beat. But you know, you won't even go much into details because you're thinking she's still too young for that. Then it's someone who's old enough, you can probably sit them down and tell them this is the reality, this is the thing. So when you're handling these ages and the different ages and all that, how do you handle them? Sometimes you have all the ages, you know, like represented in your home. So how do you get them? You speak to them separately, or you sit them down together and you know, reason with them?
I think children learn through observation. And if you keep bringing new people, they are seeing all that, and they are getting to see this as a norm. Would that be something you want your children to do when they are older?
No.
Because that is what you're modeling, and it's very important to know that. Like, you bring in a boyfriend this week, another one next week. That daughter of yours, as young as even 3 years, can see that, and it's okay.
But even before it gets to that point, I mean, just that aspect aspect of separation, that yes, daddy is going his way, I am going with you guys, or you are going with daddy, and that, and there's a difference in age.
Yes.
Do you speak to them in unison, or you just address them individually based on their age?
I think you have to separate with ages, because like for a teenager you expect rebellion, resistance, so you don't want that to happen in front of everybody else. So it's good to separate. A preteen reacts differently. They are angry, they don't talk much. For a toddler, they really don't know much, but they'll still miss their daddy, and for them, they don't really know what is happening, but absence is felt. So it's just reassuring them and making sure that this other parent is also partisan in parenting.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The psychological effects of this, or even before we get to the psychological effects, we talk about could there be psychological triggers that could have triggered this occurrence, so that people can decide, let's part ways, and we can not be able to deal with what it is that we're going through right now.
This is not normal for us. Of course, it will trigger depression, and when one is depressed, it's kind of hard to reach out to them, and the other party might feel like, you're sleeping too much, you're talking, you're not talking, you're crying too much, and all these things can trigger all that. And others could be some other underlying issues. Maybe it wasn't even working before COVID, but now this is a good excuse.
Okay, well, which majority of I mean, people would do that.
Yes. And maybe it's brought you too much close together that you've discovered, this is not what I bargained for. It's a time also people are discovering that others are having affairs and all that, because remember, you're there all the time. Who are you talking to on phone? Who are you Skyping with? And so a lot is discovered within this time, because you're in that house together most of the time. So it's kind of hard to hide something that is happening.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so that there's a way that also psychologically one would be affected, that it would trigger this point. Or trigger someone to want to have a divorce.
Yes, of course. Because if you're feeling like this person is making you even go into depression, then you can actually, not on a sober note, just decide this is it, And also we've seen that there's a lot of cases of physical abuse, gender-based violence, in families. So if someone thinks that they're exposing their children or themselves to danger, they might just decide to opt out. And remember, this is all because of frustration. Someone has lost a job, or you're on half pay, or the uncertainty that is coming with COVID, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. And maybe someone is also quarantined with some other relatives. It's too much for this man to handle, and all those such issues. So if they're not able to communicate better about it, then they'll end up making decisions that are not.
Speaking of quarantine, some of them have with all this cessation of movement, especially in the country, some husbands were locked on the other side, some women were locked on the other side. So how do you also ensure that you balance that, keep the blaze, alive, so you don't get to that point whereby you literally feel, sometimes it's funny how emotions can react. They literally forget that it's because of COVID-19, and then you just feel like some remorse and anger towards the other person who's far away, and you probably wished that they would be close to you.
I would imagine if someone was left with the children, they would feel overwhelmed. And maybe the other person is in a different town, they cannot travel. So you're here struggling with homeschooling, you still want to go to work. Maybe your house help has left. It's too much, it's overwhelming. But then again, I think it's good to establish a support system. Who is it that I can call upon when I'm overwhelmed? Who can I talk to? And also embrace professional help when you're feeling overwhelmed. And communicate with the spouse and openly, so that they know this is what I'm feeling, and maybe they are likely to reassure you, and your feelings will be a bit, you'll kind of have a change of heart. Because when you're frustrated, you just need a reassuring tone, and all that, and you'll feel better about, at least he is far, but he's thinking about us. He's able to talk to the children often. How are you doing? Are you assisting mom and all that? You feel appreciated. It's very, very good to appreciate your partner in a relationship.
And you talked of a support system, and I would want to imagine that family, extended, parents, his parents are key in this. So also at this point where you make a decision that it's over and done, Especially for those who officiated this, you know, and in the presence of the church, in the presence of the people, in the presence of your family, they all acknowledge that indeed you're coming together as husband and wife. How do you then involve them? How do you communicate to them that, you know what, it is officially over, or it's actually none of their business, it's about you and your spouse?
I think divorce is really about two people.
Okay.
And then the children, because the others just have to break the news, and then you're able to talk them through the whole process. And if you feel like you owe them an explanation,
right.
yes, it's a very private thing. So and it, you know, it comes with a lot of stigma also. You're now officially divorced, and how you've been coping with that. It's really you have to be okay with it in order to tell others.
Okay. All right. And professional help, now that you mentioned it, how important is it in dealing with this, in getting yourself transitioned at such a period? And when, like we said, we're not glorifying this. If you're able to save it, please save it at a very tender age, early stage. But if it's not, dealt with, then we have to proceed to that level of divorce. How then that professional help comes?
I think professional help is there for everybody. Even you as an individual, if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed and you cannot cope through a situation, it's good to call out to a third party who is not biased, who does not know you, who will not talk about you, after the discussion. And especially married couples. If you feel like you cannot communicate through an issue, it's good to seek professional help, because it could savage the situation. Yes, and by the time you're making that decision to get divorced, at least you'll be sure that this one we cannot talk through. Yes.
All right. So thank you so much, Nancy Rahab, for the great insights. We look forward to more, because then these are social issues. They will always be here with us. How best we deal with them is very important. Is special because there is always a different experience. But also, you know, on a psychological perspective, one would tell you that there are general ways to approaching some issues that are indeed very helpful, and that's the reason why we bring in specialists like Nancy.